Hey, welcome back everybody to the Bennas podcast. And today's guest is the sports director of Bayern Munich, Daniele Baiesi. Daniele and me go back to 2012. That's when our friendship started. And until this day, we are still very close. And luckily, he opened up today on the podcast about a lot of things. After going into his background and digging into his times at Biella, what they taught him, we also talked about how he builds a roster and what he looks for, how he accounts for chemistry and if he factors it in or not, as well as crisis management and the role of a coach in the roster buildup. A lot of good things, a lot of gems in this one, and a lot of open conversation from Daniela. I appreciate that. So if you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe. Press the little button down here, and also on all the audio platforms, become a subscriber. Listen in. The guests keep flowing in, so it's never gonna stop. And I appreciate you if you're already a subscriber. And talk to you soon. Enjoy this one. Bye. All right, Daniele, we're recording. So let's stop joking around now and let's get serious here. Since we've talked already a lot here, we're not gonna have wine today as good friends, but I'm gonna have some tea. You will, and I'll be the boss, as you see today in this video. I'll be the boss.
I'm gonna go with
today.
the water, even though it gets me rusty, but okay.
So we've been friends for a long time now, and I appreciate you joining my project, my new project that I'm doing on the side. And it actually should be called For Pros by Pros because it's a very niche and very in-depth podcast. But I appreciate you joining, and hopefully we can teach or explore some topics that are interesting for basketball nerds, let's call them.
Bennas, you must be really desperate if you end up calling me. It means everybody else said no. So that doesn't speak highly of your project. It's okay. It's all right. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, step by step. I'll invite you back. I'll invite you back. We'll get it again. So our friendship goes back to 2012, I believe, at the Junior World Championships in Kaunas. And I think that's where we met before, and we were making fun of a certain somebody that shall not be named.
I don't remember that, to be honest with you, but for sure I was making fun of somebody. Yeah, for sure.
So you were still scouting for the Detroit Pistons at that time, and I just newly started the job at CSKA at that time. But to go back into your background a little bit, because today, for coaches, I usually prepare 4 quarters. For you, I have, let's call it 3 periods with an extra period at the end, that I would like to go dig into the background just a little bit of having people understand of what kind of background you have in order to help you do your profession at the highest level. And as I remember, before you went into basketball, you had some journalist background in Italy before you became a sports director.
Correct. I actually started as being involved somehow in basketball as the guy that checks the tickets for the season ticket holders at the arena in Bologna. Okay, and I was doing that for Virtus and Fortitudo. So for me, basketball junkie that I was, and I'm no longer. It was a blessing, because getting paid 42,000 liras to check the tickets of the fans, and being actually one of the guys that could have the privilege of watching the game in a sold-out arena, it was pretty something. It was pretty special. Then things eventuated, and I started to report. I was a freelance. Which is a polite way of saying that I was unemployed. Then I joined the EuroLeague for the very first 3 years as a member of the Oficina de Prensa. I was one of the editors of the website and all the contents and the media guide. I had very much fun, to be honest with you, working there. And then for a number of reasons, I decided to move to leave Bologna and work as an undefined kind of manager in Biella, and that's how it all started. And funny thing is that in Biella, when I got there with a car, all I saw was rice fields and mosquitoes, and So I packed my stuff up for 2 weeks, and I told my employer, I'm out of here. I can't deal with this, And I ended up staying 6 years thanks to the people that I found there. And then, the rest is history.
Yeah, let me double click on the Virtus and Fortitudo together. Was that not illegal at that time to get to be hired by both clubs at the same time and still enjoy the benefits of the games?
Well, I was not really hired by the clubs. I was
Okay.
working for a company that was handling the ticketing and I don't know the English for that, but let's say I was one of the stewards at the arena. So I was working for another company, but I would not only for basketball, I was doing Formula One and some concerts. And guess what? The Reggio Emilia as well in 98, 99. So, yeah.
Yeah, but to go back on Biella as well, you said people made you stay there. How important do you find the people that you work with day in, day out in your job to make life really or the job worthwhile?
Well, I think that
it helped you stay there 6 years. So after all, it must have been more than just regular work relationships.
Well, I mean, the thing is, when you talk about those years, those are pretty much very related to the circumstances. Everything that had happened before, what I went through in my last year in Bologna. And the reasons why I basically received an offer on Sunday night and I jumped on the car and left my hometown on a Tuesday morning. So, the reason why I needed to find good people, and I was lucky enough to find great people, it was that I was also pretty much in need of finding a healthy environment. And that was my cocoon, basically. It ended up being my cocoon. In a leadership position or in a leading position, I believe this is one of the things I learned from the great Joe Dumars, and he can't lead if you don't have great people. And this is to me one of the mantras that I try to follow on a daily basis, because your behaviors or daily behaviors are what's going to establish the culture of the place you're working at. I learned a lot of things back then. If in Biella, I learned the basics. It was like I've always said, like it's like Rosetta Stone for me. It helped me decrypt the world that I want to be part of, and it basically dug some trenches in my soul that were meant to become values, and they still are. One simple thing, when my parents would ask me, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? One of the answers I gave was like, I'm buying toilet papers for the players. So my mother, her second son, who she loves and so on, so I did all this in my life so that you could buy toilet papers for the players. But she could not understand, because that was a joke, but she did not understand what it meant to take care of the people you were doing stuff with, and back then, American players would come in and their GSM phone would not work. There was a different frequency or something like that. They would walk into their apartment and they would find first aid stuff or toilet paper or fruit or milk, something to have breakfast with the morning after. And our club was composed by a general manager and 4 or 5 people, 2 out of 5 part-time. And we were the ones going around supermarkets to buy stuff for the players. And I remember those years with great pride and with a huge smile on my face always. So to answer your question, basically, yes.
But when you go back and put yourself in the shoes again of how old were you back then?
27.
27. Okay, so you coming into a cocoon, which you didn't know will become your cocoon at that time, but you're coming into a new world and a new profession or a new environment, let's say, which is very, very unique compared to the regular world, outside world that we also experience every now and then when we jump out of our bubble currently. But what was the one thing that you feel like, man, that was an uphill battle that you struggled to understand, or you struggled to feel like it was a steep learning curve, let's call it? Because I remember from my experience, I mean, I was always in a team environment to a certain extent, as a player, as a coach, assistant coach, scout. But when I went to Moscow, I was like, there was a steep learning curve, and I was like, I will 100% get fired tomorrow morning from like, I had this feeling inside of like, oh my god, I have to learn this as soon as I can, as quickly as I can. And it makes you feel kind of uncomfortable, because it's just a learning curve that you're going through, and that's the beauty of also learning something new. Growth happens when it's uncomfortable. So I was wondering, what was the uncomfortable growth factor for you in Biella at that time in the first year?
Well, I can give you the textbook answer and tell you how to scout or how to make press releases, what has to be on the headline, what has to be in the first sentence or paragraph or whatever the case may be. But what you just mentioned is actually what I had enormous problems dealing with in my previous life, because from May 2003, I mean, it was a completely different, a completely change of scenario. It's like another person started to wear my clothes. Mm-hmm. So not dealing with people, but learning how to interact with others and how to respect others, because they were great no matter what they did for how they behaved with me. They can make mistakes on the job, but one thing is to be critical and one thing is to be harsh. For example, how you address certain things. My areas of improvement, you have to understand, and that's why if you talk about those years in Biella, it goes definitely back to the situation I was living in. And, the fact that basically I got punched in the face 5-6 times at the same moment, in the same moment. And I had to go somewhere else. And believe me, one of my colleagues back then was so afraid of me joining. She knew me, that she went up to what became my employer, my superior, to ask what did she do wrong for him to hire me. So this was let's say my reputation preceded me. I was, the people that most of the people I knew or I had the chance to interact with would unanimously consider me an asshole. Excuse my language, but this was it, and I learned how to fight with other people. I learned how sense of togetherness meant back then. And looking back now, I didn't know back then, with all the respect. I had my let's say my goal or my ambition. I wanted to go somewhere and make a stand, but I did not know what I was basically going to do there. I just ran away from a bunch of problems I had. And there I could really understand what this profession really meant, what working in this business was all about, what the real important things are. And, when I say trenches that, were dug in my soul, I still remember vividly the way I felt on a day-to-day basis and how important it was for me to be welcomed by people who didn't know me and had not the best of the opinions on me. So in other words, I learned, that judging others is a very dangerous sport. And that comes into play to this day when you have to make a decision, whether it's on a coach or on a player or on a colleague, and how to relate to others in crucial and critical moments. It's hard for me to explain with details and particular examples, but it's like learning how to read and write. you will always know how to do it, basically. And so for me, it's a given.
Sounds like there was a lot of conflict and also conflict management in terms of human interactions. And if you go back, I'm sure it taught you a lot about, which I call the spectrum of people, of having interactions with a wide variety of personalities. And the more you meet them as you go along, the more you feel like you said, judgment and judging a book by its covers, as I say, or like as people say, obviously not only me, but that's something that you learn is unnecessarily done a lot of times, and you cannot do that. I'm sure that you, with this hands-on experience, went through a lot of different experiences and saw a lot of different people that you may or may not learn more about as you go on. But the more you work with a person, the more you get to befriend a person as well. The more you are in the office with them, the closer you get. How did these friendships hold up throughout this time after you left? Is it still something that you hold on to, or do you move on quick from that?
No, I mean, I'm a down-to-earth person in that sense, and I really value people that truly leave a mark in my life. Okay. Of course, you don't get to see each other very often, but I don't think we have that kind of friendship where you have to see each other every day. We don't have to say hello. Yeah. Plus nowadays, there's plenty of tools to remain in touch. But when you get to see each other, it's like we never got pulled away one another, and what we've gone through those years, and even how the situation ended, how everything ended and what happened afterwards. And even the ones that, are no longer in my inner circle, which is, inevitable for everybody. But I talked yesterday to one of the coaches I worked with over there, and he has one of our players on a loan. And I've seen the office people back in August. 12 hours is enough, especially for a guy like me. But seriously, I mean, it's to me, it's a blessing, like I said, to have met people of this kind of quality, because to tell you the truth, I would not be here without those 6 years. Yeah. I would not have a direction. Not that I would not be in Bayern Munich, but I did not know what I was doing back then in Biella until I kind of found out that what I was doing was actually good. It felt good. I liked it. And I even remember when that happened, and the kind of experience I had that night on a road game. It was the first road win of the season in Reggio Calabria. You're forced to sleep over and fly back to Milan or Torino, whatever the case it was, the day after. And I remember the way I felt that night. And it was like, well, this might be interesting for the future. And like somebody wrote once, it was a spark that set everything on fire.
So let's fast forward just a little bit. After this experiences, you became a NBA scout for the Detroit Pistons, and whichever way it happened, whichever way however your time was with the Pistons, without really going into depth, but how did the experience with the NBA team help you in your current job as a sports director? Specific, besides the network part that you experience, and it helps on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure, throughout people that you met throughout the Detroit Pistons era while you were scouting for them. But how did the role that you were having with the Pistons help you in the sports director profession?
Well, for me, it was like opening the Pandora box. Okay. Because when I talk about Biella and I say it was the Rosetta Stone, it helped me decrypt stuff. And then when I joined the Pistons, and I remember writing my first report on Victor Claver, and years later I went back, because I keep everything. I don't throw anything away, especially those things. And I burst out laughing when I read it. I'm like, oh man, I was so cocky. I was so self-assured. I'm still cocky and I'm still self-assured, But I like to say that I'm a lot more confident and self-assured. I did my we call it gavetta in Italian, which means, you know, you did your training, you did. We all have a past, you know, and considering who I was and who I am, where I come from, what I did in school and university and so on, nobody would have ever assumed I could have a career in basketball. You know, working for the Pistons to me, it was, like I said, opening the Pandora box, because it taught me how to handle crisis and how to handle rebuilding, how to handle mostly crisis, because back then we were a losing team in never-ending rebuilding or something. I've seen the franchise being sold to a new ownership, and I've seen what happens in those kind of situations from the inside of the plot. So for me, it was learning it from the best, learning that you can't make things too complicated. I remember there was in the office of the assistant GM, there was a picture of Bobby Knight. The assistant GM was his manager at Indiana University, and the caption read, "Don't complicate winning." And yes, I did understand years later what it meant, but I remember the picture. It hit my attention. Plus, when you work with the great ones and you see how simple they keep it when they have to explain things, when they have to make a point, it was. I mean, for me, it was like we say in Italian, you touch the sky with a finger, and that's what happened. You know, I've always said this in other interviews that I made. I remember going to a game, and we were playing the Knicks at the Garden. That year, the Knicks had Gallinari. I think it was okay, for sure. It was before the Carmelo Anthony trade. And I remember at the end of the game, we led the whole game. Then, of course, we lost the last 5 minutes. They're a superior team, and we lost. So Joe asked me, like, what do you think of the game? And I go like, we should have done this. We should have done that. It was my first year with them. And Joe looks at me and he says, like, I think we competed great. And he then explained me what the concept of perspective is. You can still make a mistake in choosing this player or that player and putting together the team, but you need to know why you're doing certain things, because otherwise you cannot ascertain nor admit the problem when it's time to fix it. So it was a very keep it real type of experience. And most of the things that I do now, or I say now, basically come out of those 5.5 years and everything that I learned. So I am really, really, really blessed.
Have you heard the expression "kiss"?
Kiss.
Besides the kiss, yeah, but it's spelled kiss. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
A player
it's
told me
that, right?
Yeah, a player told me that once. He said, "Keep it simple, stupid." Yeah. So let's talk about the sports director profession a little bit. How would you define it if you want to simplify and define, if it's possible at all, to simplify this profession? But what would you define the sports director profession as?
I think you're like the mayor. You know, in what we call junta, which is the city government in my home country. The mayor does everything that all the assessori, you know, it's like a minister, doesn't do. You know, they don't do. So everything else is on the mayor's table. I've seen this in my hometown when I went to the city hall one time. So every assessor would get the duties, the tasks, and then there's for everything else, there's the mayor. So this is the kind of approach that I have. I'm not saying that you have to do everything or anything that other people can't or don't want to do or don't feel like doing. This is a totally different issue. I believe that there is no definition but you know.
Does it vary from team to team?
It varies from situation to situation in that sense, because you deal or you relate to people or with people, and you can't find the same human being in two different cities. Coming to Bayern Munich is you find a different culture than the one you find in Bamberg. Bamberg is a small place, more or less the size of Biella, a little bit bigger, but obviously it's a different kind of context. And it's difficult for me to give a definition in that sense, because I believe that the sports director is the guy that handles the sports part, and the sports part is made by people, is made of people. And when you deal with people, you deal with problems. And it could be an injury, but it could be a player to sign, but it could be a player that doesn't sleep because the wife is pregnant, and he's on him the whole day. And this is what happens on our team right now in a couple of cases. We're talking about great people, but with their own issues, their own problems. And especially in COVID times, being able to inspire and help people see that there is a bigger goal ahead of you than just the result of the game. It's really difficult. Plus, I'm not probably the right guy to keep it short or simple in that sense. But I learn something every day on the profession, on the job, because I also see others. Andrea, for example, told me in practice something today that I didn't know. And he told me about he just watched the under 11, under 10, or under 11 practice, and he came to me and he told me something. And I'm like, I should be the one addressing this point, but if you don't tell me, I'm never going to figure it out. So I'm a sponge in that sense,
I think you have to be open for that. You have to be humble enough to understand. And I had a conversation with Yanis as well, Yanis Varopoulos, about that you have to be humble in order to be open for new information. Otherwise, if you're closed off and you're in your little square, you will never be able to fix anything, because you are only seeing it from one perspective, from one paradigm, and that will keep you and the club on the same level for forever, unless you learn like how to open up a little door to let some new information in, and to hopefully scramble your brain a little bit.
Well, in this, I have to go back to the years in Biella, because I had 1 year left in my contract, and it was a good contract. Okay. Plus, it was 33 years old. Who is a general manager of an Italian club at age 33? I mean, now it might happen, but back then it was the young manager. I'm still perceived as a young manager in Italy, and I'm 46 now. So, that was funny. It was 32, 31, 32 years old. So the point is, I tried back then when, I realized the concept of outgrowth back then. So I outgrew the organization, because the things that I was trying to bring in the organization in order to stimulate new directions, new horizons, the club was not receiving them. They were, wow, we made it to top 4. We qualified for Eurocup. We should play next year Eurocup to advance to the second round. And I was trying to explain them, this is the end of something. This is the arrival of the cycle that we've been, without even knowing that, but building. It's tough to talk about cycles when you change so much every year and you have no alternative. But you think about Jerebko, and I remember how Jerebko was presented to me as a signing on the market. Do you want to get the new Cephalosha? So we were basically doing something that other people were giving us credit for, and we didn't know that, and we didn't understand that. And this is when, I had, I think you were there when we had the SAP convention over here in Munich. Yep. And I said one thing, talking about, talking about how you develop, how you get better, how you can challenge your organization. At the end of the day, that's what my club back then didn't do. And I felt imperative for me to step on the side, because I was not getting the answers from my club that I was looking for. And back then, when you talk about get your facts and how do you say, it's clear in Italian in my head. This is one of the things that I'm paying the price for. Thinking in Italian, but speaking English. I mean, it was like, relationship equity was the concept. I'm not hiding stuff because I want to, hiding stuff because I want to keep a relevant position in the organization. I'll put everything I can, or anything I can, anything I have in the system, so that anybody can get better, starting from me. But back then, when I was asking questions, I felt like, no, we stick to what we are. We stick to what we've been going through so far. And then there was no longer, I was no longer coherent with the identity of the club. And I was talking about this in the SAP clinic. When there's no clarity, you take one route and others take the other. So, these are things that you learn on the fly. Basically, you don't know that before.
Yeah, there's no degree for that. And you mentioned information and handling information. That was one of the subjects I wanted to touch on also, in terms of handling information externally is one thing. When you talk to media members or whatever, it's like there's not much openness about certain details, and it shouldn't be. But externally with other clubs or with other sports directors, other GMs, other coaches from other clubs, I would like for you to explain which information do you see vital to withhold from other people outside the organization, but within our profession or within the professional realm, and which information. How open are you within the organization with each other to have the information flow between the different roles?
Well, people here, and not only here, say I talk too much. I'm too open. But besides having my reasons for talking too much, I'm open because I believe that the more people know, the better they can help. Of course, there is a limit to especially nowadays when it comes to sensitive topics like personal health, or nowadays in the COVID times, or we were coming out of the Zipser situation from that happened in May. Of course, I remember people asking me what is really going on, and I had to withhold that. But eventually it came out. It was just that you do not know what kind of use people are going to do of such a personal type of information. But look, when it comes to other stuff, this is one of the things I learned with the Pistons, because George David is again now the assistant GM of the franchise. He told me that one night he was at the game, and the scout from another franchise next to him, the executive, saw that he was forwarding me his scouting report on whatever college player. And this person asked him, like, wow, you send your reports to international scout. How could you trust him? And George answered, like, why would I hire him if I don't trust him? which is pretty obvious. But there's a famous poet, a writer in Italy, that said, like, the most understood truths are the first ones that will get forgotten. Because you tend to it's understood. Yeah, of course, it's a given, and then you forget. Yeah. And in this, to me, it's based on the situation, but there is nothing overall, with some exceptions, of course. But there is nothing overall that I'm going to hide from the people I work with. I need them to know, because our coaching staff, for example, need to know certain things and need to be involved in the decision making, knowing what the hierarchy of the club is, because anybody's point of view can be helpful in that sense. They might see stuff that I don't pay attention to. They might find out stuff that I don't know. So in this sense, okay, it's easy when you have a short front office. With the Pistons, the first years before Van Gundy came in, we had like 6 or 7 guys, and I was one of those 6 or 7. So for me, it was really a blessing in that sense, because I could absorb a lot of things and learn in that sense. But I understand that there are others who might behave differently. But this is the only way I can do.
Okay, yeah, that explains it. I mean, there has to be a certain amount of a lot of trust within the organization with each other to open up, and otherwise there will be no progression. If there's the other person that feels that there is a little bit of something is being withheld, then there's automatically going to be a mistrust between the two parties, and I always try to avoid it. I'm also, a lot of times I'm probably way too transparent, but I feel like I have to be that way with people in order to understand where I'm coming from.
Well, look, Benes, let me tell you one thing, an example, because okay, I mentioned the Zipser problem back in May, and I don't want to go over the topic, but since it's communication related, I remember receiving the call from Marco Pesic, our general manager, and the doctor, informing me of everything that happened. Okay, and I was like, wow. Because I did not understand the magnitude of the problem. And the first thing they told me was like, don't tell anything to the coaches, because we do not have enough details. Okay, we do not know how to deliver the message. I've been going back and forth in my mind that day. Okay, yeah, I understand why they say that, but I felt personally that Andrea Trinchieri should have known. He had the right to know that. So if Marco listens to this podcast, he's probably going to fire me on the spot. But I called Andrea out for dinner, because this is definitely something you would not deliver over the phone. And I told him, we had a game the night before, and Paul was on the bench, and he didn't feel like playing, of course. Certain things that happened during the game, tensions like always during the game. So I felt imperative to share this with Andrea, because I know he would handle it the right way. And it was such an intense moment for us that maybe, you never know if you're right or wrong in these things. I also felt like, it's Paul's right to share this, not mine. But at the same time, it was something that, we were overwhelmed with everything, and
it sounds like it was a gut decision. It sounds like it was a gut decision to go that route.
Look, I've been delivering bad news to my parents, and that was about my personal problems, and that was the toughest thing to do, to inform them, not to handle with the problems, health issues and so on and so on. That was a tough thing to do, and I tried to put myself into their shoes. And that's what I did with Andrea that day, and I'll never forget.
I'm sure. It's a high intense pressure moment to open up about these kind of things and to deliver bad news. I mean, I can't even imagine. I hadn't had to do that to this point.
Well, both of us were, wow, he's not going to play the finals. At first me, and then it was him. I'm like, well, I think you're missing the point here. And I remember he was, Andrea, he was speechless for the next 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And he went back with his mind. Why did I say this? Why did I do that? But Andrea, listen, I mean, it's not about you. It's about him now. But you need to know. I think you need to know. This is how I felt. Maybe I was wrong. Probably I was wrong. But this is the way I felt on stage, and this is the way I behaved.
Well, let's talk a little bit about also in regards to the head coach, how to build a roster and how much, because I have several questions lined up to how to build a successful roster. But first of all, how do you incorporate the coach in this decision making of a roster makeup?
Well, what I try to do always is to have the most options possible with the roster. So you get the players that can fulfill tasks that the team is going to need. So this obviously comes from the coaching staff. The team needs A, B, C, D, and you need to come up with options that are going to satisfy those needs. So for sure, all of the coaches are involved here in identifying the needs. You probably can testify this also. Usually it happens with scouts. Somebody tells the scouts that this is what the team is going to be needing going forward. Here we don't have a million scouts because, of course, this is Europe and not the NBA. But at the same time, I think that the approach and the principles that are behind the approach, the ideas and the steps that are behind the approach are pretty much the same. And then we just do what teams do in the war room. We just close the door and say, we're not going to get out of here until we have a decision. Knowing, as I mentioned early on, what the hierarchy of the club is. So who has the last word? The club. When you're in tune, and you work with some kind of shared purpose and understanding each other, and this is one of the big fortunes that I have with Andrea. It never happened that I'm overruling. I might be saying, like, I think you should trust me on this because I really believe boom, boom, boom. And being together for so long, the two of us, and having reasonable success together, he knows how I see things. I know how he sees things. I know what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis, for the good and the bad. But for example, in signing Rubit, that was our last signing this year, we basically went, player by player, listing them all. It should be the same thing with all players, but sometimes it's just like, boom, we agree on this, and there's nothing to discuss. In the case of Rubit, there was no alignment, no agreement on the profile of the big we should have added. So we did what the NBA teams do. Okay, what are the 10 needs we have? Prioritizing them also. And then all the options that are available on the market that are on our short list for our money, we see who basically hits the highest score. And Rubit was the second highest score. But we still went for him. And I think it was the right move.
How early do you start in this process? Like, Nicola already said in a podcast that I had with him, was that you always have to live in the future. So in the current season, you're already preparing for the next season. But how early do you start identifying the guy and then start potentially recruiting, if that's a possibility, through the agent to figure out what the situation is? Like, is there a certain time period during this prior season, or is it in the summertime, where it could be also too late? Like, how do you know that it's not too early and not too late?
Well, you're talking about the first team or the main team, of course, not the whole program.
No, yeah.
Well, it depends. You can start, targeting guys knowing that I'm sure it's going to slip out of the market, because, of course, if we compete money-wise with others, there's going to be the first 12 teams, then there's going to be 10 feet of crap, and then there's us. Okay, so which is okay. It's fun for me, and at least it gives me, it stimulates me, coming up with ideas. And this is going back to 1 second to the Trinchieri topic. This is the beauty for me of working every day here, and whatever we try, even the things that don't work, are always stimulating. They would always be worth trying. Okay, and there is a thought process behind it. Sometimes you target the guys in January. Sometimes you target the guys in November, and you can actually do stuff. Sometimes you have to wait until everybody else overlooks the player. Or until he feels bad on another team. The standard deadline is usually the Final Four for EuroLeague market. After the Final Four, you know this better than I do. because you've been the bigger fish in the pond, and you still are, because you're the NBA basically. So if you make a phone call in your position to an agent about you name the player, the player is going to be wanting his agent to go till the very end to explore the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you, if you're me in Bayern Munich in this moment, you have to wait, which means that you need to have option A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, because that's the only way to sleep at night. Because if you put all of your stock on one guy, and then this guy ends up signing somewhere else, you're dead. And that's when you lose your sleep. And this is one thing I learned working in Biella, because very often we would put all of our stock on one guy. Most of the times it worked well, and sometimes we got screwed at the very end. So
like that's why, like, sometimes the bigger fish, let's call it the big clubs, or their phone calls, I think, are few and far between, because whenever they call, they're in a position of power. It comes at a high premium. And the medium level teams, they may have to do the recruiting a little bit more often, a little bit more phone calls, a little bit more information gathering, and then build the relationships a little bit longer with the agent or with the people around that person, in order to be already present if the other things don't fall through. Is that, for me, a correct way to understand of the process?
Yeah, it is. There's a movie line in Moneyball movie where Brad Pitt says, if we think like the Yankees here, we're going to be losing to the Yankees there. And as long as you have this kind of approach, and you know who you are, because this is one of the trickiest things of Bayern Munich, for example, because people see the brand and they say, like, wow, you know what, you guys are going to be signing boom, 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 boom. That's not necessarily the case. And I mean, we're not the poor relatives. I would say we're poor, but not relatives at all yet. Maybe we're going to get there in the future, and maybe we're going to get a big enough fish. But I think that our recruitment follows an unconventional route in that sense. We're not going to go there and offer more money than other teams. Of course, I don't mention the names of those teams, but we need to be credible in the working environment and the basketball proposal we come up with. This can only happen if we have a very clear identity and a very, very strong culture. And I can give you an example. I think that, for example, Darren Hilliard, he had higher offers than ours. And but we proposed him to do something on the court with the ball in his hands that he has never been given the opportunity to do. It comes to a cost, because, of course, you use him for what he's already good at. He's not going to make much mistakes. He's going to be a safe landing. But the safe landing for safe landing, he is going to go for the bigger salary. You have
to offer something different.
I can tell him, look, it will be growing pains. It will be this, it will be that, but this is who we are. If you come in with the approach of rediscussing who you are and, play another hand of poker. So you've been on a Final Four team. Actually, two Final Four organizations, because Baskonia is a Final Four organization, and CSKA, no need to say. You come here on a team that will celebrate every single win, because this is who we are. Then, if at the end of the season we had enough wins to qualify for the playoffs, we're going to go nuts like last year. But we do not approach things for this reason. We are going to come up with something for a guy like him, that we are in the intermediate step for a guy like him. So you have to know who you are in order to know what to offer to these people. You're going to be working every day. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing that. You're going to be playing this way. So there's obviously the other, the flip side, which is this might cost us games in the first part of the season. And of course, nobody likes to lose, especially coaches. But when I say you need to handle development, we competed great statement that Joe told me was, look who we have on the roster, on the payroll, and look who they have. Not in terms of quality, but in terms of how many years have the One Summers been in the league? How many years have Austin Day been in the league? And so on and so on. Tarico White, I don't even remember the names, but, and as I said, you can still get the wrong guy, but you need to have the right perspective on what you're doing every day.
And you have to deliver on the promise as well. And that's another thing that also Andrea and me also discussed in the episode prior. Whenever you're recruiting a player, there's certain things that you have to deliver on, and if the player doesn't deliver on that, then the role could also change. So that's also a possibility in certain regards. But
it's on the player then.
That's what you say. Yeah, exactly. Do you factor in chemistry when you build a roster? Is that something that you take into account whenever you're recruiting players and put a roster together? And if so, at what premium does it come? Like how much is that of a priority in terms of chemistry? Because for with all due respect, as we're talking, like it's in the medium level team, competing to be in the playoffs and competing to get if you get to the Final Four, it's like you said, you celebrate every win, and that's a humble and a very great attitude to have. That's, to me, like I think you can be successful with the underdog mentality no matter what team you play on. Just the big fish is sometimes they lose their underdog mentality and they rely and they anticipate wins to come easy. But for the other level, let's call it other tier of teams, I think chemistry is a huge factor. And that's why my question is that something you seek out, or do you think that you try to navigate somehow with the roster, with the players you put into the roster, that you're hoping that it comes together as the season goes along?
Well, I think that hoping sounds a little bit too much like flipping the coin. Okay. There's a difference between knowing stuff and getting caught in what people say. For example, I think that the best chemistry we had here in Munich, the team with the best chemistry, was the most unlikely team to find a winning chemistry. But last year, it happened that these people, for a number of reasons, and some of the reasons are unrepeatable, okay? And that's why we changed so much, because we have to take these reasons into account. Everybody overperformed. Everybody and anybody had the chip on his shoulder. We were coming out of, I would say, kind of a tragic season. And as a club, we wanted to prove. And the players we signed, they all needed to prove. They clicked right away. For example, okay, sticking to the question, you can assume certain things, you can know some facts, but whether they're going to click one another, it's a different story. And you can reduce your margin of error, but nobody's going to guarantee you that it will work. Just like nobody can guarantee you that it will not work. I think that you need to be doing certain things because you know how. Okay, if you don't do certain things, they will never get together, or most probably they're not going to get together. But for example, how many times did you hear like, "Wow, we have a great group of guys"? That doesn't necessarily translate into good team chemistry, because the difference between a group of people and the team is that the team foresees roles. The group doesn't. You're part of a group. I mean, you just walk in, they're going to accept you no matter what, or not accept you no matter what you have to bring to the table. Here, you have to make things clear when it comes down to the role. And this goes back to what we've talked about. When you give a player a role that he has never had and you recruit him, and the rest is how, for example, in a conversation, you and I are going to listen to each other. What you're going to tell me is going to enrich my point of view, and so is the other way around. So how much are they willing to sacrifice of their own stuff in order to have team success? again, last year, I always give the example of Baldwin. When I signed Wade, and I've been after Wade even the summer 2019, everybody was like, stay off him, stay away from him. He's a troublemaker, blah, 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 blah. Wade hasn't finished on a high note in the Bundesliga for a number of reasons, but mainly because he has never played. He had never played that late into the season. So did Jalen Reynolds. In the COVID year, when the biggest indulgence you can allow yourself is to smoke a cigar on the staircase going out of the gym after the biggest win in the history of the club. So, these are things that need to be taken into account. So paradoxically, last year, COVID brought us together. This year, okay, I don't know what's going to happen from now on. It seems like the situation in Germany is going pretty bad. But we did not have that thing that kept us together the whole time. The flip side is that the guys got burned out. Not most of them, but some of them got burned out. Crucial guys. We're not going to make it if Wade doesn't perform. And that's exactly what happened. So, there's a number of considerations that you can make that is endless, and in order to keep it real, yes, you need to get your facts straight. Yes, you need to find what is on the paper good basketball chemistry. So I think this guy pairs well with this other guy. And the rest is, how they deal with each other every day. This is my belief.
The pairing is important. Of say who likes to play with whom, what roles. The personality is in tune with the role that he's going to have. Sometimes, there's delusional imagination of a role, and then the character comes into play if the role does not align with his character.
Well, Ben, it's pretty obvious. I think that the Wade Baldwin is a guy, for example, that is super smart. He's a super intelligent kid, okay? Highly educated, and he's a good kid. Now, I think he walked into the locker room and he took a good look around and he saw an alpha male standing in the corner. And he goes like, oh, I understand, this is his team. And regardless if he really believed that or not, okay, but he respected that. So I believe that when people talk about chemistry, they imagine, they talk about universal love and people loving each other. No, I think that there has to be mutual respect in order for them to function with each other. And respect of the game, respect of the personality, and a big time accountability. Wade has always said, like, Lucic is our leader, this and that. Now you see people say like, yeah, you have one record with Lucic and a totally different record without Lucic. Yeah, but you imagine if you cut the head off to a human being, you would have a body that doesn't know where to go, and this is exactly what happened to us.
I just want to reiterate for all the listeners who are looking for some things to point out. When I say delusional imagination of a role, and I'm not referring to any players, just to make sure that I'm still representing an organization that I have to be also aware of. So
I can see you grew up in Germany, Benas. I can see that.
Yeah, the diplomacy. I studied communication, so I know how you can be interpreted, or also the experience helps as well. So just want to make sure it's not misunderstood, because a lot of times you say one thing and then it comes out one way in your mind, but other people interpret it the way they want to interpret it and the way they see fit to be interpreted as. And I would just want to make sure that I don't have a relationship with the listener right now, so I don't know what he's going to think, where he's going to go with his mind. Just keeping it real, just all. This is what we do on this podcast. We keep it real, and I wanted to go on and ask you about crisis management, because you also mentioned crisis management that you had the I don't know if I want to call it pleasure of dealing with, but it is some sort of challenge that every team goes through. I don't think there is a successful team that doesn't go through a crisis of whatever magnitude, big, small, whatever it is, but sometimes multiple crises in a season. But how do you approach it when you identify there's a crisis, whether it's a losing streak or there's a conflict with the team or there's a fight on the court between two players in practice? How do you approach a crisis? And each crisis is different that I just mentioned. It's completely different approaches to all of them. But is there a general approach that you have that you're going to point to a meeting, you're going to talk to a certain person in the organization? Who's the first one you're going to approach? So like, talk to me a little bit about the management part.
Okay, most of the crises I had to deal with were never related to players fighting one another. So I can't tell you how I would behave on stage. If it happens, I'll call you. I'll let you know. But I'm a very respectful man, and I try to understand what the reasons are for one behavior, okay, or the other behavior. Most of the crises are result related. And I go back and I repeat myself to the "we competed great" type of statement, because, you know, the result is the ambition, not the goal. The goal is to get the best out of your personnel, for example, to make it, okay, to have the chance to fulfill your ambition. It's okay, in Italian the word is tecnicismo, but it changes the whole perspective. And I'm not saying this because it's a catchphrase. I'm saying this because I have to focus on the performance. You know, Zdenek Zeman said once that the result is accidental, but the performance is not. And you need to have a cold mind, enough cold mind, in order to distinguish the two things. You know, am I losing the game because the others outperformed us? Am I losing the game because of you were in CSKA when Kriapa turned the ball over against Maccabi Milan? I'm sorry to open an old wound, but
we open up the can of worms right now. Let's go.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
So the bounce of the ball was not regular because there was an awkward area on the parquet. So who are you going to blame for? Okay, you should have been in that position. You were up 10, 3, 4 minutes to go, whatever the case it was, you know, but yeah, it's still a Final Four. I mean, how can you take things for granted in a Final Four? And by the way, the underdog team won that year, if you remember, and you do. And I know you do. The crisis with the results is you need to show unity. You have to be coherent. You know, there was a player that one time refused to play, refused to check into the game during the game because he was mad at the referees. He had, you know, he was mad. I'm not going to play. I'm out of here. I'm done. So, but you need the guy. So how do you handle a situation like that? Like Nicola says, you need to see the future in that sense. So, okay, you don't want the guy, you pull the trigger, the guy's out. Probably even for a right cause or something. So you have a reason to, he's in breach of contract. He's basically not going to work.
Yes.
But as a club, you may want to have an edge on a guy, especially the guys who cause trouble. And you want to keep him on a short leash. It's an example I'm just giving, you know. There are complicated personalities and there are guys who can see through you in that sense. And they can spot. So, you know, on one end, you need to have the ability to inspire, but on the other end, you need to have the ability to manipulate. Mm-hmm. It sounds really bad, okay? But look, I can't go in details, but, you know, there was a famous coach years ago that, you know, when his player, you know, got caught drunk driving and had a car accident and hurt the guy, whatever. I mean, the player was freaking out for being thrown out and I got no future here and there. And this coach was smart enough to go there and, you know, basically tell him, you're going to be okay. We're going to take care of you. Don't worry about anything. This guy was in jail. Okay. And guess what? This guy's played for the same coach for 10 years. So, and they've been accomplishing quite a lot together. This is a story that I was told by the back then assistant coach of that team. So I'll relata refero. So I'm telling you. So, you know, you can say he inspired him. You can say he owed him a debt. or he just manipulated him. Any way you look at it, he was capable of reaching the guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you do it, in my opinion.
I totally agree, and I completely see that. And it's very subjective. It's from person to person. It's different, but you have to have a feel for people in that regard to understand. All right, this guy, he will appreciate if I show strength, and I do not punish him. I do not kick him out just because it says on the book in the 101 of management that if you do this, you'll be fired. But I show him a helping hand. I give him a helping hand, and he will pay me back triple the what he normally would have paid back. And I have an example from my times in Germany when my father was the head coach, and there was guys that we put on contracts on tryouts because we brought him in, and in the second division it's more like it's easier to do those kind of contracts with a tryout. And my father, because he played, he had a feel for the person, he had a feel for the player, that he's just too uptight. He's too uptight. I can see that the tryout period is above his head, and it's just like, man, I can see the talent in him. I can see it's just that he needs to get these extra 10% off his shoulders to perform well. And you make a gut call. You make a gut decision in that regard. I was like, man, and we had 9 out of the 10 times, and there was one particular that didn't work out, but 9 out of the 10 times it worked out because it just exponentially got better and the team played better because the tryout period was off of him. So it's not like crisis management per se, but it is certain kind of knowledge of people and knowledge of the situation, which comes with experience and with a certain amount of emotional intelligence, I guess, as well.
Yeah, definitely. It happens very often that once you go up to the kid and you say like, well, we decided to go separate ways, then the guy has the best game of his career.
Yeah,
has
exactly.
a career game.
Yeah.
Because you know what?
No pressure. Yeah.
I remember a movie line of The Usual Suspects. How to spot a murderer. You say you arrest 3 guys. The guy that's sleeping in the morning is your guy because he can rest. He knows he got caught. So that's what I compare the thing to. But let me tell you one thing, if I can steal you 30 seconds about the crisis. When we were in Bamberg, I remember one of the very first games that I attended was the home game with Bayern, and we won big. We won by 20 or something. And I remember the owner wanted to give us a bonus or something like that, which I rejected. I said, no, it's a regular season game. Why do you want to pay a bonus? No, says this is, we already get paid to perform well. It's not an accomplishment winning in the regular season. Okay. So, 3 weeks later, we play Eurocup still against Bayern. We're in the same group. And we lost by 38 at home. Okay. And I remember, in Italy, they would wait for you outside of the arena. They would beat the crap out of you. Okay. But here in Bamberg, everybody was in shock. Okay. Now, I remember that was a kind of a turning point because he put us in a position to be the underdogs. Mm-hmm. There are 40 points between us and them. They are the defending champions. They have a very deep rotation with all the German guys we have. It doesn't matter whether I feel our team is better than theirs or is going to end up being the better team when the time comes. I basically played the role of the underdog because I knew that the moment we got overconfident, we lost by 40. That was, and this is why I say that the biggest of the issues we had, even back in Biella, happened, occurred when we were winning, not when we had trouble. When we had trouble, we became like a rugby team. I remember fighting to save the division, which we did by losing in Bologna to Fortitudo. You can imagine the way I felt that day, at Paladozza, and we had to wait for the result coming from Livorno. But still, the moment you are overconfident, that's when you do the biggest bullshit, and excuse my language, but because, you relax and you're like, I think I'm good. The moment you start thinking you're good, it's the moment you should quit. Because, it's like, I can't remember if it was John Wooden saying, how would you do it all over again if you think you know it all, Yeah. And sometimes you just have to do it. And that's why going back on the professional definition, you have a window, you have a time frame where you can really do, you can get the best out of your years in a club. And then inevitably you're going to consume yourself, and you need to be smart enough to know when it's time to leave. Okay. When you, for example, you can't lead people through crisis. Today I was talking to the agent of one of our players, and I told him, like, I read once, the person who gets out of the storm is not the person who walks into the storm. And that's what the storm is all about, So how, it's development of players. And this is one of the issues we have nowadays. You take an agent, and the agent goes like, well, you need to let the guy go because he's a young guy, he's not playing this and that. No, he needs to fight through. If he can't fight this, you can't be coming in his rescue with a shortcut. You're sending the wrong message. It wasn't the case of the agent I spoke to today, but this is what you get most of the time. The guy should play. The guy should play if he deserves to play.
Exactly.
I handle the same, with the same type of principles what happens with the team. I mean, we're not ready to be this good. We need to keep working. We need to change things. If you think you're good enough, then you should be winning every game.
So let's just go back a little bit more into the players aspect. What do you think is the biggest reason for a player's mental collapse during games, during the season? Like, what do you think it originates from, or is that something that just is lingering and is growing as the season goes along, and the player is feeling some sort of disregard by the organization, by the coaches, or whatever it is? What do you think is the biggest reason for a player's mental collapse?
You mean most frequent or most important?
Most important.
To me, the most important is the fact that if I had to draw the mentality of the players, which is the vast majority of the guys that come here, because everybody sees Lucic how he is right now, but nobody remembers that Lucic came here to get out of Valencia because he was not satisfied. He didn't have playing time. He won with the team. They won Eurocup, for example, and I don't remember what else. But at the end of the day, he came here to prove himself. So if I have to draw these guys, I would draw them as, those, enigmistic stuff, so I don't know if the English is correct. Like the magazines that they give you, like, how do you say, an image made of dots, and you have to connect them.
Enigma,
something like that. And these guys have all the dots, but they have never been put in a position to connect them and to really know and figure out who they are and what they're expected to do. So they come in, you tell them what the role is. Yeah, but it's like the Blues Brothers, where they go to the country place and they just see the list and they go like, yeah, but this is just a list. We'll play our own tunes. And they got, people start throwing bottles and stuff at them. So, all of these things to me are, how do you say, adding up, and these guys go through some mental collapse because they don't have support, and they don't know that they have to hit rock bottom in order to be willing to ask for help. It happens very often with young guys because they're closed up. They don't want to share their fears. If you don't open up, if you don't ask for help here, how can we help you? Because you're 20 years old. You're not supposed to know. You're 28 years old, but you have been playing at the level you don't belong to yet. You skipped steps, and inevitably reality will set in. I believe that this is the case of Darren Hilliard. I mean, he's going to hate me, but I've been pursuing him for years. Okay, I've been trying to sign him for years. He went to a level that was too high, where they evaluate how much they're paying you instead of where you come from, what you've been missing in your career. Yeah, but I pay you this much and you have to deliver. This is, I'm not saying that this is what happens in Baskonia, but I'm just saying that this might be tricking the mentality of the player. Because, for example, a player signed for $500,000. When you every month pay a guy 50,000 euros, it's hard to convince him that he needs to learn stuff, that he needs to go through this crisis, that crisis, or the hard coaching of the guy, or the coach, or the benching thing, or the fans booing him, whatever the case may be. I'm a big believer in this, and I learned it on the fly because, even this is a movie line from Moneyball. Like, well, you pay me $7 million, so he goes like, no, the Knicks, the Yankees are paying half of it to play against them. This is what they think of you. So, and sometimes, it would be easy to do the maths, but they don't connect the dots. This is what I mean. That would give them a very healthy reality check, and they would be put on the stage they belong to, and they would finally be able to start over, because in the end, it's a new beginning when they come here, or a beginning.
Mm-hmm. This is hot stuff right here, Daniele. I like it. You're very transparent, very open.
You should have known that.
Yeah. You ready for my ATOs? And I'm gonna be shot firing at you some quick hitters to finish off this podcast, and you gonna answer me as direct and as quick as possible. But I will not rebuttal anything. I will just let you talk.
Well, I was a terrible player, and mostly I would never remember plays. So make sure you explain me the ATO.
Simple. Yeah, your role is gonna be simple. Stand in the corner and shoot. Stand in the corner and shoot.
All right.
Advice from your older self to your younger self.
An advice. Eat more vegetables.
A book that impacted you the most until this day.
It's two equally. One is Legacy, about the All Blacks, and I think that a friend that we know gave it to me. Okay. And the second one, it's actually a very, very easy reading book. It's kind of a diary. It's called La Vita Fino a Te. It's an Italian book, of course. And there are 2 or 3 chapters that when I read it, I said to myself, I should have written this. Damn it, I should have written this, And it's when it's like meeting the free soul, you recognize it right away,
How often do you exercise during the week?
Every day. 6 out of 7 days. I ran 10 kilometers.
Favorite white wine for a fish dinner?
Oh, that's tough. Okay, you want hot stuff or you want entry level?
High end, high shelf, top shelf stuff.
I can't name the brand, but Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, and it's how do you say, it's an orange wine. Okay, so it's does maceration, and I can say the name. It's Emidio Pepe, so it's big brand, and big in the sense that famous, but not commercial stuff. It's wow.
Favorite red wine for a meat dinner?
Taurasi from Salvatore Molettieri. Vigna Cinque Querce.
And last one, this is a Tim Ferriss question. I don't know if you know Tim Ferriss or not. This is a very favorite entrepreneur and has a podcast. And he always asks his guests, if you could put one thing on a billboard for people to see, what would that be? On a huge billboard on a highway or in a city, just so people can see something that you would put right on there.
About what?
About anything.
Ooh. Well, I can't answer the question. I was hoping that you would ask me who would I have dinner with, but I'd rather have dinner with. But no, I really don't know. I've never thought about it. I don't know.
I'll substitute that question. Last second substitute for the ATO. We're subbing somebody else in. Last question: Who's your choice for dinner? Because Andrea had the same question. So choose the dinner with people alive currently.
Oh, alive.
Three people. 3 people
alive. Okay. My longtime schoolmate has been sitting next to me for 5 years. He was described by the professor, a literature professor, as a cult student. This was the definition he was given. Definitely David Blatt, and probably my parents.
All right, we'll leave it at that. And Daniele, thanks a lot for joining my podcast over here, my platform, my hobby on the side. Thanks for being so transparent and keeping it real. I'm very pleased to have you in my inner circle of trust. So I'm looking forward to seeing you soon again.
Don't keep Italians too close, though. Be careful. Thank you for having me, and yeah, it's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye, everybody.